Yes, the Shmoo Group is great. Their con is in, I guess it's March now. Where did Heidi go? It's February. Okay, they've moved it around a little bit, but my God, it was like 1,200 people this last time. That was its third year. It's a really good conference if you don't have the money for, say, something like Black Hat, or i.e. you don't have a corporate company to sponsor your ass to get out there, and you want to go see some really good speakers. You should definitely go to ShmooCon. All right, hi, I'm Billy. You all probably know who I am. I do a lot of stuff with the web and with AJAX and with JavaScript and making the baby Jesus cry by drinking Framboise. I probably shouldn't have started with a 750 milliliter bottle of this, but we'll see how far I can go. So, how many people have actually heard of AJAX? Please raise your hand. All right, great. So, normally I'm big on slides and I talk really fast and I always go long and I know it pisses Dolomite off. So this time, there's like hardly any slides. There's a couple slides with some scantily clad nurses on them, which are just for fun. The rest, just hacking. So, let's start this up. I've been talking about AJAX for a while now, and it's kind of boring, a lot of people will say, because AJAX applications, and we'll get into this, increase the attack surface of your traditional website. You can directly manipulate an API. Does everyone know what I mean when I talk about an AJAX app as opposed to a traditional app? All right, good. I can explain that. Okay. Yes? Explain it. Okay, so Google Maps, fast, sleek, MapQuest circa 1997, sucked ass. You clicked a button and waited. And then it came up. And then you realized you zoomed in too far, and so you click the button to go back. And then you're like, ah, crap, I need to go west. Oh, wait, not that far west. And it was a horrible pain in the ass. So AJAX is basically a way of JavaScript hooking the events that you're doing and contacting web services on the server to pull down data. So the URL you're at isn't actually changing. And so instead of receiving fully formed HTML pages from the server, you're receiving little pieces of data that JavaScript on the client is reassembling into a full page on the fly. And so, like, Google has a bunch of stuff like Google Documents and Sheets. Gmail is all AJAX. You know, it gives you a web, or it gives you a desktop application experience with a web app. I talk really fast, so if you have a question, raise your hand and shout at me, because I probably won't notice otherwise. So, needless to say, all these extra features, all this stuff that's opened up on the server, it's an increased attack surface. There's more stuff I can mess with. And by directly manipulating with this API, you can do really nasty stuff. They're easier to reverse engineer because there's code on the client now, a significant amount of code on the client, as opposed to just having, you know, HTML and maybe a little bit of JavaScript and your database tiers and everything else on the web server. So it's a lot easier to figure out what to do. But when I talk about this, almost always the response I get from developers is, surely no one ever actually does any of the stuff you're talking about. No one exposes a web service that doesn't have authentication where you just supply a username and supply a password and you can reset anybody's password. That's stupid. No. We see it in the wild. So instead of just talking hypothetically about all of these issues, I decided to do sexy AJAX security. Woohoo! In which case, I would go out and find all the expert advice. I will put aside the fact that I bust web apps for a living and think about myself as a web developer saying, I want to learn about AJAX. So I'll go buy the most popular books. I'm going to go visit the most popular web forums, you know, go get possible how-tos, magazines, things like that, and I'm going to build a sample AJAX travel site. And I'm just... I do. We'll get to that at the end. I can be a complete pimp at the end of this. Notice there are no corporate logos in this because I really don't think HP would want to see me doing this. Alrighty, so what we came up with is some... Oh, man, that's strong. We came up with something that was riddled, utterly riddled with security defects. Now, the thing to keep in mind here is that I did not bake any of these security defects in. I never once said, you know what? They're telling me to use parameterized SQL statements here, but I'm going to use ad hoc because I know that's less secure. I always did what they told me to do. And I came up with something really, really insecure. So let's go ahead and take a look at what the site is like. Okay, can you all hear me? Okay, good. So basically what we got here is just your normal sample travel website. You know, it's Hacker Vacations where you name your own price, and sure enough we'll find out that you in fact do get to name your own price for anything on here, a lot like Priceline. So we're just going to go ahead, log in. Spy. Great. And we'll see Hello Spy. I have no itinerary saved. So, you know, we just kind of browse around. I can search for flights. Frequent, well, of course, 31337 is always the frequent flyer ID. So, you know, and notice I got all these flights back. URL didn't change. And this is what I mean by kind of being AJAXy. Now I'm going to come over here. I'm going to book a flight. 8:30 is a god-awful early time in the morning, but I'm going to go ahead and make an offer. Let's say $30 for a seat. And can you all see this here? Okay. I'll bump it up one more. So we see down here, holding seat, making $30 bid on seat, offer refused, releasing seat done. So again, it didn't change, but in the background it did a whole lot of stuff. Now everyone here is using Firefox, right? You should be using Firefox. And Web Developer Toolkit. Web Developer Toolkit. All right, we'll make this. Well, whatever. Anyway, so let's go ahead and try. Let me go down one. Let's go ahead and try $99. $99 is an obscene amount of money to pay for a flight to Vegas and back, but let's try it. Making $99 bid on the seat for Delta 749. Offer accepted. Booking seat. Seat booked. Debiting account by $99. Done. Okay. Looks pretty cool. I'm going to go ahead. There we go. All right. I think that'll work. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead. We kind of see how this app works, and sure enough, let me go check my itineraries, and I see that I've got a flight booked. So that was kind of cool. So let's start going behind the scenes. Now, the cool thing about this entire demonstration is I am not ever once going to use a magical hacking tool. I am just going to use a web browser and a few web browser plugins. I'm never once going to look at server-side code. I'm going to do this exclusively with just a web browser and manipulating the client-side code that comes down to me. So let's take a look at search. What happens when I do a search? So we see over here, this is Firebug, which you all should come to love. It is a JavaScript debugger. It's God's gift. If I ever found this man, I would probably try to kiss him. Because seriously, my job would not be possible without this. So I'm going to go ahead and inspect this element to find out what happens when you click that Find Flights browser button. And I see right here, there's an on-click for search for flights. So it's actually calling the function search for flights. So let me come over here to script. Let me see what that actually does. And I see here that there are two kind of common files that are included, a common.js, and we'll look through this a little later, and a json.js. Those kind of look cool. Let's look actually on the search page. And we see right here a big block of JavaScript, search params have changed. All right, so here's where search for flight happens. So we go ahead and we're pulling, this little code gives me the cities I want, the date, the seat preference, and right here we make a fun little call to search for flight. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and just set a breakpoint. This is the great thing about Firebug. I'm just going to set a breakpoint, and let's go ahead and search for a flight. Okay, and I've hit the breakpoint. So my code's right here, and sure enough, I see departing city, origin city, destination, the date. Let's go ahead and step into that block of code, and we see that it's assembling basically a JSON object. JSON is just kind of a way of packaging data to send back and forth. Another really common one with AJAX is SOAP, which is XML envelopes, things like that. So it's going to actually contact this little function right here. I mean, we can trace it into the code, but just trust me. It's going to make an HTTP request to AJAX calls findflights.ashx. This is basically a web service. I'm going to pass it some data, basically all of this object right here, the JSON object, which, if y'all can see, start city, destination city, time. And then when it's done, it's going to call back the function search for flights callback. So let's go ahead and step out of this code. I'm going to put a break right here. Run. And we're going to go ahead and actually search for this flight. Let's try it again. Just find flights. Okay, there we go. So I'm in the response. I've actually gotten the response. And sure enough, if we look at the text, this is what actually came back from the server. We can investigate it. It looks like a block of XML. We see new data set, some flight info. Stepping through here, it basically looks like we're creating something called tables. And then if table length is 0, we say there are no flights found. And then we clear the old results, which was the searches that came back. And then this is very interesting down right here. It says results to display tables.length. Now there's something about Firebug I didn't mention. There's this thing over here called .net, which basically shows you all the web traffic that went on while you were using Firebug. And if we look right here, we made a request. Oop, where'd it go? Post. So here's what we actually sent to the server. ATL, destination city, Las Vegas, my seat preference. Well, that's really interesting. There's something here called employee discount is equal to 0. That's something we should probably play with a little later, so let's make a little note. Now notice the response. This is what I was trying to show you earlier. The response is basically a giant block of XML. Now here's the funny thing. Remember how many flights got returned? 3. But there's a lot more than 3 flights here. So what's happening? I'm getting back more data from the server, and then the client-side code, remember, because it's getting these chunks of data, is going to package that into HTML and display it. So let's actually see the code, because somewhere inside of our code, we know it's limiting the number that it's going to display. And that actually occurs right down here. We're saying if tables.length, well, let me actually, can I run to cursor? I don't think you can in Firefox. All right, let me just go to there. All right, so basically, table.length is 7. That's how many results we got back, and that's how many things we want to display. Results to display is now 7. But we see there's this constant max results that we're checking it against. And if we were going to display more than the max results, we only display the max results. Well, that's kind of silly. I want to see all the results that got returned. So I'm going to go ahead and right over here where it says results to display 3, we're going to change that back to 7. Because I want to see all of it. And then we see right here we're just entering a for loop, and this is where it actually displays the results. So I'm going to go ahead and just run it. And sure enough, right here, we see all of the results that got displayed are there. Now this is a heck of a lot more manageable to me. I mean, I don't know about y'all, but going at an 8:30 flight, that sucks. Going on, I can't do military time. That looks like 4:15. That sounds a heck of a lot better. So let's book that flight. Now, of course, we want to do the same thing here. What happens when I actually make this bid? So let's do the same thing we did before. Let me slide this down. Inspect. All right, so we're going to call hold seat. So let's go ahead and go over to the code and find out what actually happens here. Select. So when we try to make an offer on a flight, it's going to do a couple of things. Remember what we saw in the output. It's going to hold the seat. It's going to check our offer. If our offer was good enough, it's going to go ahead and book our seat, and then it's going to debit the account, and then it's going to release the seat and print our itinerary. So there's basically 5 steps in actually booking a seat. And sure enough, if we look at this code here, man, I'm sounding amazingly lucid for having drank half of that. Hold on. So, all right. So right here, y'all see hold seat right there. So we go ahead, update progress just spits out the little text that says holding the seat. We grab the flight number and we call back to the server asking it to hold the seat. And what we pass to the server is the flight number and then the function to call when it comes back. The reason we have callback functions is that the A in AJAX is asynchronous. So when you send a request back to the server, the user still gets to interact with the page. That's why AJAX is so responsive, and that's why Google Maps and Gmail work, because you can continue to interact with the page because this request is asynchronous. It's happening in the background. And when it comes back, it's going to call this function right here, hold seat callback. And we see that if the result, basically what came back from the server, does not equal OK, we'll then display the error. Otherwise, let's make him an offer. We come down here and we see that we're accessing the bid value, what was actually in that text box to make the bid. And we're grabbing the flight, and sure enough, we're saying making an offer of this amount on this seat, and then we call a function called make the offer, passing it the flight number, the offer, and a callback. And so you guys can kind of see the cascade of these events going on. Make offer callback. If the result was okay, we say offer accepted and call book seat. Otherwise, if the offer was refused, remember how we held the seat? We've got to release it. And the reason you hold the seat at the start of the transaction is, let's say there's only one seat left on the flight, and I start trying to check out and buy it, and at the same time, Kobayashi, because he's pulling down PhD money, has a much faster connection to the internet than I do. He comes in and connects, and his transactions back and forth happen a lot faster than mine, and he actually steals the seat out from under me. So what happens is basically while an offer is happening, the very first thing is I'm going to hold this seat so that Kobayashi can't steal it from me, you bastard. We'll have our White Russians and Oreos later, dude. It'll be awesome. So I think we're safe. Actually, I watched the attendance. I think we're going to be safe this year. He knows what I'm talking about. It's a bad story. All right, so if the offer was refused, we're going to go ahead and call release seat to release the resource. And we see way down here, release seat just contacts a web service to release it. Otherwise, I know I'm talking really fast. Are you all following? Am I going too fast? Wow, all right. I'm going to kick it up a notch. Okay. So now we're going to go ahead and if the offer was accepted, we're going to call book seat. Now, with book seat, we're going to grab the flight number they want, their username. We're going to say booking their seat. We're going to pass the username in the flight to the book seat. And then when it's done, we call the book seat callback. I mean, again, this should sound very repetitious. And then if it was okay, we say seat on the flight was booked. And then we act. Whoop, that wasn't what I wanted to do. Over. So then we call, go ahead, debit account. Otherwise, again, there was an error booking the flight, we release the seat. Now, debit account, here's where we actually take the amount, take the coupon text, notice there's that coupon field there, and then updates the progress, debiting the account. So this is very interesting, right? We actually, if you think about what's happening, is that normally in a traditional Web 1.0 app, I would basically submit my username, the offer I wanted, everything that I wanted to do with booking a seat, and I would submit it to the server through probably a web form. You know, I'd do a post. And then at that point, the web server would basically do these 5 things in order on the server. And once I gave this data to the server, I couldn't touch it anymore. But you'll notice here, some of this data is on the client. The client kind of controls the order the web services are called on. This presents something interesting that's not really available in traditional web apps, because in traditional apps, JavaScript didn't have a means of talking with the server and really couldn't play a meaningful part of the application. It could check to see if you filled in the proper zip code before it submits the form, but it really couldn't do processing. It couldn't really do any meaningful work for the app because it really had no means to coordinate with the server. So what we're going to do, we're going to put a breakpoint right here on debit account. And we're going to run this code. So this is Delta flight at 4:15, very good. I'm going to make an offer of $99 because remember, the order is hold the seat, evaluate whether my bid is good or not, book the seat, then debit my account. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the value that I'm willing to pay in the middle. So we see booking the seat for $99, offer accepted, booking it, and now we're in the debit account. Let me go. That was kind of quick. Let me show you here. So holding the seat, making the offer for $99, the offer got accepted. It booked my seat, and the seat got booked, and now it's in the debit account function. And so I'm going to come over here, and it's going to say, the amount it wants to do is $99. No, no, no. $99 is too much. We want to give them $1. $1, Bob. You know, it's very sad because Bob doesn't do that anymore. $1, Drew. Is Drew? That's the new Drew Carey does The Price is Right? Are you shitting me? Wow. From being in The Mask with Hot Cameron Diaz to hosting The Price is Right? Wow. Okay. Yes. Oh, no. Oh, Drew Carey. Okay, well, fuck that guy. Cleveland. All right, anybody been to Cleveland? Cleveland does not rock. That show lies. Yes. We'll get to that in a moment. Remember, I didn't make any of this shit up. I got this from places. So I'll show you. So I'm going to go ahead and continue running the code because I broke it. And we're going to come back. And sure enough, we see booking the seat, debiting account by $1, done. All right, let's go check my itineraries. And I have a flight on this afternoon flight booked for $1. That's kind of interesting. Why did that happen? Okay. Well, what happened is that, they broke out what used to be an atomic process that took place on the web server into, they kind of pushed it to the perimeter to a 5-stage process. And they let JavaScript control that. So before, when I wasn't able to tamper with data, once it got submitted, I can tamper with data after it's been submitted. So this is kind of interesting, right? Why do I have to go through the trouble of setting a breakpoint and actually changing the value? What about if I call the web services out of order, right? Because it called the web service to hold the seat, called the web service to book the seat, or to evaluate the offer, to book the seat, to debit the account, and to release or to print the transaction. So what happens if I just call book seat? I don't know. Let's find out. So let's do a search. Let me see here. I'm going to go ahead and go from, and I only had time to load data for Vegas and Atlanta. It's this really complicated comma-separated value thing to do it. It wasn't a very good design. Oh, wait. I don't want max results to be 3 because that's really annoying. Hold on. I want to get all the results. Max results is 3. It's not 3. Can I change? Oh, wow. Let me change that. That's kind of annoying. Hold on. Sometimes Firebug does weird things. Whoa, wow, that was weird. No flights matching. Hold on. Oh, I went from Vegas to Atlanta. All right, Atlanta, Vegas, search. Tick, 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 tick. All right, and actually display me all the results. Now, I mean, I could just edit the HTML or the JavaScript that got pushed down here, but, you know, I happen to be using an interactive debugger. That's a little better. All right, run that code. Oh, so here's the problem with using Firebug, right? Anybody here use Visual Studio for their job? Okay, so Visual Studio, F5 is continue. In the browser, F5 means refresh the page, so I just lost what I was doing. F8 is continue in Firebug. I am so open to peer pressure. All right. And I don't really care about this anymore, so I'm going to remove these breakpoints and just run the code. Run. Okay. I should have 3 results. Sure, fine. Let's go ahead and try booking this American Airlines flight. That looks kind of cool. So remember, American Airlines flight, all I did this for is to get the AA number. Now remember, I'm not even going to go to the bid page. I'm going to do this all from the search page. Now look here, under script, remember how it was, let's go to common. Common has where all these functions are actually stored. We see the flight search, we see the make offer. I'm going to come down here to the book seat. Okay, copy. We're just going to fire up a console. All right, so I'm going to book the seat. All right, what are the parameters here? Script. I need to use the username, the flight number, and the callback. So my username is spy. My flight number, what did I say? AA92? AA92. Yeah, it is AA92. Awesome. All right. And then for a callback, I'm just going to do window.alert. That's the function that pops up dialog. So all this is going to do is just give me the raw result that comes back from the server. I'm going to run it. And it says OK. So I'm going to assume everything's OK. So let's go find out what just happened. You know, let's go check my itineraries. Itineraries. Okay, cool. I'll tell you what. Let's do it again. You know, I got friends. Let's see what happens. Okay, awesome. Refresh. I have 2 flights booked. All right, now this is very interesting, and we'll get into why all this is possible in just a moment. But who remembers the really interesting part of the bidding process? When you bid too low and it held the receipt, and then later decided to release the receipt? Anybody here that does database programming or any form of multi-threaded programming knows that allocating a resource in one thread and releasing the resource in another thread is a very big no-no. Because what happens if that other thread that is releasing the resources is getting insufficient execution time? This is a deadlock. There's potential for a deadlock or a race condition here. So let's go ahead. Let's check our code. Y'all aren't talking about how much I suck, right? Is this good? Are you liking it? Woo! All right. Thank you, Rattle. I appreciate that. All right, let's go right here. There was a really fun one. Hold seat, we're going to call it. All I have to do is give it a flight number. So let's pick a flight number of a flight that we don't like. You know, I'll tell you what. There was an 8 a.m. flight, right? Nobody wants to take an 8 a.m. flight. That sucks. So 8 a.m., there are 3 seats available left on it. And that's, let's go a bid here. And I'm just going to throw open this. All right, can you all see this? I'm putting this in. I'm going to do hold seat. The flight number is DL749. And the callback, window.alert. So all I'm doing is I'm calling the hold, basically the allocate resource function. This is kind of like, you know, what's the joke? It's apparently something you're supposed to do in graduation, where all the students who are getting graduated, when they walk across the stage and shake the hand of the dean, they're supposed to hand him a marble. He takes it and puts it in his pocket. And the next guy comes up and hands him a marble. And like, what can the dean do, right? He's standing up on stage, so he's like, marble. And everybody does this. His pants fall off. The marbles go everywhere. It's kind of lame, I guess. But it's the same problem, right? I'm grabbing resources, but I'm never letting them go. So let's see what happens. Okay. 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 Error. B081. Info. Available seats equals -1. That sounds kind of cool. Let's go take a look at this. I'm going to refresh this page. Seats remaining, 0 coach seats left. So I've performed a denial of service attack against the plane. I have tied up the resources. Basically, from the web server's point of view, it thinks that there are 3 simultaneous transactions going on. That 3 different users are trying to book 3 different flights, and that they're in the very first step of it. And their modem connection must not be nearly as good as Kobayashi's, because all they've done is say hold seat. They haven't gotten around to making an offer yet, but man, hopefully they'll make an offer soon. Only you never do. You just wait there. Now let's think they're smart, right? Maybe they actually have a process that runs every 30 seconds to clear up. Matt, don't worry about it. You guys saw this presentation already. So, some of the guys that I work with. Maybe you've got a process that runs every 30 seconds and cleans up stale handlers, right? They're going to get these things out. Think about this. I sent 3 HTTP requests to take up all the seats. 3 HTTP requests is a minuscule amount of traffic, and I performed a denial of service attack. This is what we call a control logic denial of service attack. Because how do you knock Google off the internet? You can't. They have how much dark fiber have they been buying, right? You can't possibly get a botnet large enough to knock Google off the internet. So instead what you do is you look at their applications and you misuse them. Basically the JavaScript they're pushing you, that's a blueprint on how the application is supposed to function. Call web service, call web service, call web service, call web service. We're going to call them out of order. We're going to manipulate the variables. We're going to call one without calling another. We can see that here. There was kind of this domino effect. The application assumed you held the seat, you made the offer, you booked the seat, you debit the account. And as soon as you started messing with this, bad stuff happens. Now, if you think about that, what really happened here was there was an overly granular API. Where is this thing that I want to talk about? So what happened in this was probably this, right? In a traditional app like Expedia, I would submit my username, the flight I wanted, my bid, everything like that. It would actually go to the server. And then at the server would talk to your backend tier, like your database tier, your load balancers, all that stuff, your session cache, everything, and actually do those steps. Go ahead and check the offer, hold the seat, check the offer, book it, everything. But what happened when you made it AJAX-y, because you wanted to make it responsive, is you took all of these web services and application tiers that were previously hidden, right? I had no idea what happened beyond that web server, and you pushed them to the perimeter. You exposed them as a web service so that I could actually interact with them. We've actually seen problems like this before. To sum that up, you basically had a lot of short operations that were being performed, and what you really needed to do was contact the server and say, hey, I'm going to perform a long operation. It's going to be a long operation of actually booking a flight. And so run all of those things in the order with the data so it can't be tampered. And then let me call so it can still be responsive and still be a sexy, AJAX app that'll get you $50 million in round 1 funding. I'm going to call a polling function to go ahead and find out where you currently are inside this big long process. So you get the responsiveness of AJAX with the security of a traditional desktop app. Now, I actually saw this in the wild. This is a real web service that got exposed. It is an update password administrative interface. And we see here, first of all, bonus points to everyone who can count the vulns. Just shout at the vulns as you see them. So basically what this does is this accepts the string, a user ID, and then a password, and says, I will reset that user's password, and resets it, and then returns to you the new password it got reset to. Now, it was SA, so which is administrator of SQL Server. So there's a couple things here. One, denial of service, right? I can just guess somebody's username and set their password to MuffyCat72. Who's going to guess MuffyCat72? Why not? Or Lambic, right? So, we've got denial of service vulnerability right there. We've got SQL injection because they're concatenating it. What happens if I set as my my user ID, tick semicolon, my personal favorite, which is drop. Who reads XKCD here? Little Johnny Tables. That's right. I had that cracked me up. I loved it. So my personal favorite against SQL Server is shut down with no wait. Kills the database like that, just drops it immediately. And there's also a cross-site scripting vulnerability here because you're directly reflecting back to me the text I gave you. Now, here's what happened.
This particular real-world application, it was probably part of a more complicated multi-step process. And there was probably, when it hit the web server, the first web service that got called probably made sure that I, one, was authenticated, and two, that I was authorized to change that user's account before actually getting to. But again, there's this big rush to push it to the perimeter where it can be directly manipulated to enhance the user's experience. And again, I've got so many more web services to talk to. Every single one of those, we're not even talking about traditional attacks yet, like SQL injection against these things, but that's so many more places, so many more footholds into your app where I can break you. And it's not properly, the control flow is not properly enforced. Multiple problems. So this rush to AJAXify an application before it's ready is what we like to call premature AJAXulation. And it is my job actually to dig through the premature AJAXulation of the internet and find out what actually people are doing wrong, how they actually improve it. My boss totally told me he'd fire me if I used this clip art, and I totally used it anyway. Not at this. They don't even know I do at this, but I actually did this out at AJAX World. And luckily, Eric doesn't check his email. So, all right. So let's keep moving along, right? Because there's some really cool stuff here. We've seen that web services really are the brain of the application, right? I mean, you've now pushed logic to the client, so you can see what it's doing. And now we're actually talking to these web services. So let's see what other web services we can find. Now, you'll notice that we always seem to have a reference to this file here called common.js. That's always there. I'm on, wow, didn't mean to do that. Close. You know, I'm on the search page. I'm on the bid page. It's there. I'm on the search page. It's there. You know, I'm on the itineraries page, which doesn't even accept input from the user, and this common.js file is referenced. Now, this file contains, as we saw earlier, all the code. Let me go to the top. Whoa. Not there. There we go. It contains all the code, you know, for like flight search, but I'm not on the flight search page, or to make offers. I'm not on the make offer page. So what happened here is, this is very common. The web developer got lazy. And really, programmers in general are lazy. I mean, their entire job is to write something to basically automate a task that they don't want to do manually. Their job is to make robots because they're too lazy. I mean, really, it's okay, right? So what they did is they got ultra lazy, and they said, well, you know what? Our app, you know, 70% of these functions are used by every page. So let's just throw everything into this file, appropriately named common.js, and have that have everything in it, and we'll just reference it. How am I doing on time? I guess about 25? Oh, yeah, we're doing good. So basically, the web developer said, well, I'll just throw everything in this file. Well, we've seen that there's stuff in this file that if I'm on a certain page, it's not applicable to that page. So it's possible that when they were putting kind of everything into this file, there could be other parts of the web page, other functionality, right? Maybe I can manage for example, my Miles Club, you know, my Delta Sky Miles or something through this website. And maybe that's in beta, right? Maybe that's not publicly available, but the web services are already there. So because there seem to be references to things in this JavaScript file that's not currently being used by the page, really digging through what we're currently looking at, maybe we can find references to some of this unused functionality. Or maybe not unused, but functionality that I'm not aware of, that I'm not supposed to be able to get at. So we start digging through here. You know, we see make offer, book seat. All of these are things we've done. Release seat. We start seeing update seat. We got a Miles Club check, so there's a Miles Club somewhere. Update part, you know, that's a seat. And then we see this fun one called admin.addUser. Wow. I love web services that are prefixed with admin. So then, you know, deals, add banner. You know, there's some other stuff down here, some pretty date. Let's go mess with this, right? Now, this is where things really start getting fun, right? Because I know nothing about this web service. I haven't seen code that actually uses it. You know, up here, we were able to see that it took the flight number, and, you know, we saw, you know, we could actually trace, for example, right here, flight search. We could trace what the destination city was, the origin. What's the data format of that? Is it a string? Is it only 3 characters? The departure time, what time format is that? We could set breakpoints and see what the functions or what the structure is of that JSON object before it called the web service. Here, we just found a reference to this admin web service. We have no idea what it does. So I'm going to go ahead and fire up. I lied about not using a special hacking tool. Anybody can use one of these things. This is just an HTTP editor. If you're really elite, you can do this in Netcat. If you were really elite, you would just whistle these tones down the modem and own it, I suppose. But, you know, we all can't be the molesting Captain Crunch, so Let's move on. I call them like I see them. All right. So we know that it's talking to AJAX calls add user. So let's go ahead and put that in there. Now, all this is going to let me kind of handcraft an HTTP request. Everybody has ever tried to, like, browse the internet using Telnet at least once, or directly connect. You all should. Everybody here sent fake mail before, email, right? Telnet support 25. You just manually type the commands that your Outlook or, webmail types. I totally send email from God to people and things like that. This is how spammers do it, right? So you can directly connect to the HTTP port and send whatever you want. And all this tool does is lets me do it. Some open source ones that let you do this. Paris Proxy is a really good one. There's some other ones out there. I'm just editing a raw request. Now, I'm going to contact AJAX calls add user. And I know from this call right here, it's a do post. And I see it's passed a blob of JSON and a callback function to call when it's done, which only makes sense, right? We've seen JSON for everything so far, going back and forth. So I know that it's a post. So instead of, you all know what an HTTP GET is versus a post. Don't worry, it's not important. Anyway, it's a verb telling the server what to do with the data. And then I'm going to go ahead and I don't know what data I should be passing it, but I know it's supposed to be JSON. So I'm going to give it an empty array. So just left square bracket, right square bracket. And let me go ahead and apply content line. All right, so this thing is ready to go. I am basically right now sending what your hold on. Some framboise will loosen the tongue. Oh my. That is tasty. All right, so basically I am sending the HTTP request that your web browser would send behind the scenes. And sure enough, if we actually looked at Firebug, we would see these requests going across. So let me fire this request off, and I get a response from the server. 200 OK. Always good to get 200 OKs. And the error message here, can you all read this? I can't bump this font up. It's kind of small. It says, error, missing username, missing name, missing password, missing debug flag. Debug flag is kind of like that, that employee discount equals 0. That's something we can play with later, but we don't want to run into Bruce's time. So we got 20 minutes. We're good. All right, so I sent it. I know this is a web service. I know it takes JSON. I sent it empty data, and it gave me what class? A verbose error message. Verbose error messages are your friend because they tell you what went wrong. So what happens here is I know that it apparently takes 4 pieces of data, a username, a name, a password, and a debug flag, apparently to add a user to the system. And I most definitely want to add a user to the system. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to go ahead and add PhreakNIC, if I can spell it right. So let's just give it Phreak. That's it. And let me change the content length so it's updated. I'm going to go, not PhreakNIC, that's too long to spell. I've been drinking. I'm almost done with this. Come on. It's amazing I've gotten this far. Okay, so, and we get back. Now look, we got a different error message. Error, missing name, missing password, missing debug flag. So apparently it's using Phreak as the username. Very interesting indeed. So let's come over here. Let's do Phreak as the name. Let's do Phreak. Actually, I don't want to do this. Let's do Phreak as the password. And debug flag, yes, true. Everybody wants to be debug. All right, let's send it. All right, we get back a different error. Error, invalid value for debug flag, which is a shame because I really want it to be it. All right, let's try false. What the hell? Maybe they got some type of thing. I don't know. All right, send. Same thing. Error, invalid value for debug flag. All right. 42. 0. Let's try 1 because 1 is true. All right, apply. Send. Success equals true. Success is true. All right. So let's just, now here's the thing, right? And this happens when I'm doing these types of things in the wild. I don't know what I just did. I found the web service. It took some data. I munged the data until it stopped yelling at me. It's a lot like a programming or a marriage. You just do what's right until the yelling stops. You know, where do you want this box? The kitchen? I thought you said the kitchen. The laundry room? I just moved into a house, so I've been going through that. So, okay. Let's find out what we just did, right? Because I'm still spy, so let's go ahead and log out. And let's log in as Phreak. Phreak, super Phreak. That too. All right, let's see what that does. Click. Wow, that looks a lot different. All right, QA. Hello, Phreak. Well, hello to you. All right, we've got our normal thing up here, search bids, and then we got this lovely little bar here that says debug, current users, toggle ads, set session data, load transaction, dump logs, and my personal favorite, return to admin. Because I didn't come here from an admin page, and I most definitely want to go back to the admin page. We look down here, we see some other data. We've got, a loads. We see casper.bigip.hightechvacations.net. So they got a big IP load balancer. We see the GUID they're using. We see a host. We see what appears to be an uptime off a Unix box, which is a little odd because I'm running, it's ASPX, and I looked at the headers, and it's IIS, so it's not. Maybe this information is coming from one of the load balancers or maybe one of the database tiers. We see some information here about the refer. I came from the login page. We've got a user agent here. So that's all good. Let's go ahead and return to admin. Administrative area. All right, with a fun little error, object reference not set to an instance of an object, which is a null pointer exception. So that's always or null reference. This is ASPX, right? So it's probably C#. So this is interesting, right? I found an admin page. Now, the number one rule of web hacking is always look at the URL. And what do we see here? We see site config, and index.html. So a lot of people might have a tool like Nikto, or you shelled out some money and bought Web Inspect or something like that, which are professional tools to actually assess web security. And we have a bunch of checks in there called durinum checks, where basically we're just guessing crap, right? That's enumeration is geek speak for I'm just guessing shit. So, you guess things like admin and login and, secret and things like that. We've got about 900 in there. We probably never would have guessed site config. So we have now found a part of the website that we didn't know about before. So, of course, what is my username? Admin, login, nothing. Well, it's not Unix, but I'll try root. No. I can back, tick or 1 = 0. No. You got to try them, right? So, we can bang on this thing all day long, right? But why do that? I can write a script to bang on this all day long, right? I'm Leet. I know Perl and LWP and work for a software company that already wrote a tool that would do that. So I can just fire up a fun tool called WebRoot, which would do this. But that's kind of lame, right? Who cares? Who cares about accessing the admin portal? I don't care because I already basically am an admin. I can, remember back on this page, I can load transactions. I can toggle ads. I can look at the current users. I can set session data. I'm looking at big IP loads. I basically am the admin without all the baggage of having had to go through IT and, email them or call them up and be like, hi, I'm like an admin account. I just hacked your place, and please tell me how to get into the portal. I don't need to do that, right? Because let's take a look at this. What we've got here is an exposed administrative function. The intended use is that users access the website through like home HTML, search.aspx, and they're talking to this common JavaScript library, which is hitting web services on the server. And admin users log into the admin portal, and then on the admin portal, there's JavaScript there to go ahead and talk to these web services and do it. It's the classic idea that they assume that the only way people can talk to the administrative web services and pass the proper data is if they've logged into the portal. But that's stupid. I already found the web services, and I was able to reverse engineer how to talk to those services. So essentially, I'm hopping around the admin page.
So what would be included on that admin login page?
Excuse me?
What would be included on the admin login page in terms of JavaScript files?
Let's take a look. I don't know. Well, this is, remember, this is just a login portal. Let's see if it actually has any. It does not have any JavaScript includes. But this, like I said, this is probably just getting you through the door and actually get you to the portal, which would probably have a fun little, AJAX widget to, for example, add a user. But we are directly talking to that web service. We've essentially bypassed this entire concept of using the admin portal to get there. Now, remember when I talked about increased attack surface? There are lots more web apps to mess with. Let's actually look at those web services and see if we can't directly mess with them. So I'm going to fire up an HTTP proxy. All this is doing is I'm running the traffic. Everything that my browser spits out, I'm going to run it through something so I can see what it's doing. Again, Peros proxy. There's a bazillion open source HTTP proxies. Some are better than others. this one isn't particularly great. It's just one that I know how to use really well. So I'm just going to start this sucker listening, and I'm going to come over here. Let's go back. Let's get out of Phreak. I'm going to do all of this without actually being Phreak. So spy. All right. I got about 10 minutes, so that should work. Okay. So let's go ahead and switch proxy. In addition to Web Developer Toolbar and Firebug, is extremely helpful for web hackers. So sure enough, these are, for those people who didn't realize it, these are the HTTP requests the browser was sending. These were the things I was manually forging when it fetches that page. We see it grabs the style sheet, the JavaScript files, some images. It's all good. So I'm going to go ahead, come over here, and we're going to go to the search page. And let's see what happens when I actually search. Let's see what the HTTP request that goes out is. So I'm going to look here. And again, I'm sorry, I can't increase the font on these tools, but hopefully y'all in the front can see, and I'll tell you in the back. So we've got an HTTP post here. It's going to the web service. AJAX calls find flights, and here we see the data, that got sent is start city, Atlanta, destination city, Las Vegas, departure time, seat preference, and that fun employee discount, which we probably should get around to messing with. Now notice, what we get back is just a big blob of XML. And remember, the fundamental difference with AJAX is instead of sending data to the server processing it, and then what we call basically binding or laying out an HTML page, a nicely structured HTML page, and returning it to the user, the web server is now returning chunks of data. And it's up to the client-side code to take those chunks of data and interpret them and then actually give you a visual result. For example, displaying them all at the bottom, or like when we saw when we were booking a flight, giving us those little text updates about what we want to, how far along we are in the process. So here we've got a big block of HTML. So let's go ahead and check for SQL injection. Because SQL injection is one of those fun little things. We know that this is talking to a database. Let's go ahead and see if we can inject it. So I'm going to go over here to the start city, and I'm just going to do kind of a classic, single tick. I'm deliberately, So I actually can launch the HTTP editor from the proxy, which is why this is handy. So I'm basically going to edit that request that just went through and replay it to the server. And so we're going to put just a tick right here. What we're doing is deliberately breaking the SQL. Y'all know what SQL injection is, right? Don't make me. Okay. Basically what we're doing is we're sending commands to the database, and we're trying to break it. Because what the web server is doing is it's taking input from the user and passing it to a back-end database. And if we send the right type of data, it's possible for us to actually piggyback commands right through the web server back to the back-end database. And for example, dump out all the credit cards or dump out all the users and get it to come back out. Whenever you hear in the news about someone losing 150,000 credit cards, it's normally through something like SQL injection, because you just dump the database. Rarely, if I need to steal 150,000 credit cards, right, I'm not sniffing your traffic, right? That's unless I've owned Earthlink and I'm getting everybody, right? And I'm probably not installing keyloggers, though, phishers, they widespread it, right? But, SQL injection is like your one-stop, I'm dumping your database and I'm out of here. So we're basically going to send something that's malformed. Bruce, I might run into your time for about 5 minutes. Is that cool? Ooh, all right. Well, you're going to need to get me a little bit more front ball for that. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and send that request. Oh, and what do we get back? I don't know if you all can see this. We got back something that says, incorrect syntax near LAS, unclosed quotation mark after character string. This is the database spitting back a message that says, look, you gave me a command and I have no idea what the hell that means. So we have found out that our input is in fact getting to a back-end database, and that it's trying to interpret our input as commands. And we send something malformed and got an error back. So this means we can start sending commands. So the first command that I'm going to send, right, everybody here who knows SQL injection probably knows about something called union select SQL injection. This is basically a big pain in the ass, because what happens is that the web server is taking input and it's passing it to the database in a traditional app, and it gets the result set from the database, and then it iterates through it. It runs through, all the flights that came back and inserts them into a pretty table, or it goes ahead and, maybe if you're looking at Amazon, it pulls out, the Scarface DVD picture and the description and the user IDs, and it assembles everything and then spits it back. So if I piggyback more commands and I jack more data out of the database, in a traditional app, the web server is going to go, wait a minute, what's all this extra data? And it's either going to error or not return it to me. So in traditional web apps, without getting too specific, you use something called union select queries to basically try to inline the data you're stealing with the data that's already getting returned, so it comes out. But we're going to do something different. We're just going to piggyback queries right on top of each other. Because remember, we're getting raw data back from the server, which is then interpreted by the client. It's a lot easier if I just show you. So I'm going to go ahead and do tick. I'm just going to run another query on top of this called select name from sysobjects where type equal. And what I'm doing is I'm saying, hey, database, tell me every table in the database that a user created. So this is like the users table, the orders table, the accounts, credit card numbers, all that fun stuff, where type equals u dash dash. Apply. Ooh. Let me change this here. All right. Are y'all? The dash dash is a nice little kind of trick. I mean, I don't need to do the dash dash, but the dash dash is a way of declaring a comment in SQL Server. What I could do, because I'm getting out of a enclosed tick mark for Atlanta, because what happens is in the backend database, there's this what I'm sending is getting passed to some type of query, which is like, select me all flights, or all the flights that the from city, where the from city is Atlanta. And so what I'm doing is I'm breaking out of that. And so instead of using a dash dash, I could do something like, where I actually say, like, for example, and tick1 equals tick, which would have the extra part on. But dash dash just makes it a lot easier, and for this demonstration, it's all I really need. So let's go ahead and send it. We got 200 OK, so no longer a 500 server error message. And see, this is all the flights, and then right here, look at this. Table, name flight, users, and trips. Because what's happening, let me jump to this slide real quick. For those of you who aren't crazy web security people, what was normally happening is that the web server, in a traditional app, the web server would have gotten all this extra data back and would have said, wait a minute, I don't know what the hell that is, and wouldn't have actually returned it to me. But in an AJAX app, it pushes that all the way to the client, and then it's the client's job to actually present it to the user. But it doesn't matter. It's already gone across the wire. I've already seen it. So count the queries with me. We've done one query to find out that there's SQL injection. We've done a second query, and we figured out all of the tables in the database. So let's go ahead and look at this again. We see that there's a table called flights, a table called users, and a table called trips. Well, I don't know about you, but users sounds like a really good table. So we're going to go ahead right here, select star, so give me everything from the users table. Doesn't work on SQL Server. Works on Oracle, but select star from star does not work on SQL Server. At least last time I checked. All right, so here we go. 200 OK. We see a bunch of flights, and then piggyback down here, Billy, password, MD5 hash. Real name, Billy Hoffman. Admin, MD5 hash. Sam. So, Chesty LaRue. I was kind of drunk when I was putting these in. Eve, Addison Wesley. So all of this stuff went in. So count the queries. One query to find SQL injection. A second query to dump the tables. A third query, I just extracted your entire users table, and I'm already running John the Ripper on those passwords. Normal SQL injection, 3 queries in, you'd still be trying to figure out how many columns there are that you need to match to actually get data out of this. So in AJAX applications, injection attacks orders of magnitude faster. Not even like 1 order of magnitude faster. I dumped the users table in 3 queries. If I was doing that through a blind injection or something, you're talking about thousands of queries the traditional way. And I know I'm running up on the time, so I just got like pretty much just closing remarks on this point. So was that cool? Did you guys get it? Yeah. Good? All right. Let's do this. So again, just to kind of repeat it, that the fact that AJAX does so much with binding on the client, that's what's causing these problems. All right, so just real quick, there's race conditions in JavaScript apps. I don't have time to show you this, but if you think about it, I'm going to asynchronously start a lot of processes that take a long time. So if you think about adding an item to a cart, there's multiple things in that cart. You know, hey guys, just keep it down. I'm going to be like 2 minutes. I'm getting towards the end. 2! Well, like, all right. I don't want Bruce to take that much out of my ass. He can take 3 minutes out of my ass, but I don't know if I could handle 4 minutes. So the drunken propositions begin. Going to be a long night. All right.
So, when you add an item to a cart, you're talking about adding the item to the order and then updating the order. When you think about checking out, you're debiting the user's account and shipping the order. If I start both of these operations within a certain amount of time, I can race condition these together so that I add the item to the account, I add the item to the order, I debit the user's account for the current amount, which would be 0 because there hasn't actually been anything in my cart yet. Then I update the total order cost, and then I would actually ship the order, as opposed to adding the item, updating the cost, debiting the account, and shipping the order. So race conditions in AJAX apps, they're very hard to come across. I'm not going to lie and say, oh, these just fall out of the tree. And they're pretty hard to exploit, but they're there, and they're something that don't exist as much in traditional apps because you're exposing a much richer API in an AJAX app. All of this stuff, remember, I started this talk by saying I didn't put any of these vulnerabilities in there. I wrote this travel app using books and using tutorials and using pages I found on the internet because I wanted to see how insecure an app a developer would create if they were using the best of breed advice. And so I got a lot of this from AJAX design patterns. This whole concept of storing sensitive state on the client. For example, I was able to manipulate and set breakpoints and change variables while they were being consumed by the web service because those were being stored on the client. I was able to manipulate control flow. I called web services out of order. I called web services to allocate resources without calling the ones to release the resources. We saw that exposed administrative functionality. So many places recommend, hey, just throw it in 1 or 2 JS files. It's a lot easy to maintain. Unvalidated input. I mean, there was SQL injection. Hardly any developer books talk about input validation, and when they do, they talk about blacklisting, which we'll talk about in a second. And there's the increase in susceptibility to injection attacks. This is because the web server essentially acts as a proxy to the database tier. It passes what the user requests and then doesn't look at the results and passes them back. And as soon as those results hit the wire, I just dump an entire table. So there's a really big issue with AJAX apps on who do you trust, right? I mean, you've got blogs, you've got books, you've got conferences, and they don't really get it right. And not to be a complete horrible whore, but I do have a book on AJAX security. So I actually, if y'all will come up, I have on my laptop a free chapter, and I will try to thumb drive it to people. Actually, I'll tell you what. If you go to msblabs.org/ajax.pdf, I will upload that. So that exact URL, msblabs.org/ajax.pdf. I'll put it up. It'll be up for 24 hours, and then I'll take it back down. Y'all are free to grab it. It talks about everything I talked about here and a lot more, breaking into offline AJAX apps like Google Gears, all sorts of fun stuff like, oh man, I love Facebook and MySpace. So in the 2 minutes that actually I could take, my tuchus is strong. And, you got the little ones there. So these are just the advice because really I hate it when people get up and talk about problems without talking about solutions. I hate it even more when people stand up and say, my solutions are in the form of a product, please buy them from me. So I sell a product, but hey, don't buy it. I don't really care, right? I get money for doing research, not for sales commissions. So, at this point, I just want people to fix, what? Well, yeah, there's that. I just want people to fix their stuff, right? Because chances are there are so many web developers and this field's growing so fast, one of them is eventually going to end up working for a website that I use. And so it's for purely selfish reasons that I try to educate the public. So the key here to remember is client-side code is solely a suggestion. You cannot force anything you push to the client to actually run, or for that matter, run unmodified. This means Flash, JavaScript, Applet, Silverlight, anything. A whole lot of other advice, which I'll ignore. You need to perform authentication and authorization checks on both the web pages and the web services. So we saw they were checking on the admin portal, but not on the web services the admin portal we're talking to. Validate all input to your application. I mean, this means HTTP headers, cookies, query strings, post data. And it's important about how you validate it, right? You need to use whitelist input validation, which is where you say, I'm going to only define what's allowed. If you think about it, a bouncer at a club is a perfect example of whitelist input validation. Bouncer says, I'm only going to let people in that are wearing, guys that are wearing, slacks and nice shirts and a button-down shirt, and girls that are wearing really tight black cocktail dresses. And that's their orders. And anybody who isn't wearing that doesn't get in. Think about if you said something like, don't let anybody who's wearing cutoffs in. Well, I'm not wearing cutoffs. I'm not wearing any pants. Well, according to the bouncer, he's going to let me in, because it doesn't violate his rules.
So whitelisting looks for specific things. The other thing, I gave a talk here about 2 years ago on Tiny Disk. Y'all remember? You see it? Writing a file system on top of tiny URL, always fun. So verify length. If I'm accepting a zip code, it better only be 5 digits, and it better only be 5 digits. Seriously, not 11,000 digits. This other shit's not important. I don't care. I don't want to run long. Thanks a lot. I turned it off.
Let's hear it for Billy. Take it off, baby. Someone hose him down.
Don't worry, it won't live long. I would never pay for your book. I would never buy it.